My name is Rachel Hagemeyer, President and CEO of the Canton Symphony Orchestra. Welcome to our podcast, Orchestrating Change. Okay, I'm so excited today to have with me Darin Nissley, who is the Executive Director of Lighthouse Ministries. I've been on the board of Lighthouse for several years. I don't know how many.
4? I think this is your 4th year, maybe.
Is it? Oh,
so.
Gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
Time is insane and I don't know what's happening. But I'm so excited to have you to talk today about Lighthouse and some stuff that we get to do together as organizations. But if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about who you are and all that good stuff.
Yeah. So, Darin Nissley, Director at Lighthouse. Let's see. Husband, my wife is Ramona. We have 3 children. We've all who have all grown up in the Southeast, which is where the Lighthouse is located. It's really become home for us.
Yeah.
I'm a hobbyist beekeeper, and I have fruit trees
at some point.
and like all sorts of I just love puttering down around our little abode.
Your little abode. So with our podcast, we talk, obviously the lens of what we talk about is a lot of times classical music. And so we have conductors and composers and all that good stuff. And so this is a kind of a different episode because, spoiler alert, you're not a conductor.
I am not a composer.
You're not a composer, but you are the leader of a nonprofit here in Canton. And so if you wouldn't mind sharing the mission of the Lighthouse.
Sure.
And maybe a little history about how it got founded.
Yeah. Lighthouse started in 1996 when my wife and I moved into the neighborhood. We moved into the neighborhood. We got married in 94, lived in a different part of Canton, but moved into the neighborhood in 95. And I was already serving as it was a volunteer youth pastor position at the church.
Yeah.
And I ended up being the youth pastor there from 94 to 2014. So just really sort of embedded in that faith community, but also the neighborhood.
Yeah.
It was out, and then the church had some what's the word? Just really well-run programs for students, in 1st through 6th grade.
Yeah.
And we realized that there was a need for programming for the students when they graduated out of 6th grade. And so a couple of us got to talking, and, there were a number of stories that had sort of started bubbling up of kids leaving Venture Club is what the name was. And, they noticed that they were in the paper for getting in trouble, or they saw them walking around with maybe members of the gang, the local gang in the neighborhood. And they were like, oh, they were just such good Venture Club kids. I wonder what happened. And so that repeated, or that consistent bubbling up of those stories, several of us were like, oh, what can we do to create something for students that are older? And that's really where the Lighthouse sort of got. That's where the idea of the Lighthouse was born. So in 1996, we asked the church if we could remodel an old shed to be this youth-friendly place where we could do some programming for middle schoolers in the neighborhood. And so we remodeled it. I think we had $1,400 left over at the end of the remodel, so that was our budget for the first year. I mean, it was just crazy, but beautiful thing.
Yeah.
2 volunteers. I think we had 6 or 7 middle school kids.
Yeah.
To launch the first middle school club, youth ministry club, and from there, things just kept sort of evolving. So a few years later, we had someone from Young Life come by and say, hey, you have all these kids coming by after school. You should start an after school program and you should hire me to do it. And, so we added after school, and that changed over the years. Yeah. But then we added the summer camp and the summer field trips, and then later on the arts programming. And it's just been a very beautiful, sort of story narrative. Little side note, the church that the Lighthouse was launched out of, they just celebrated their 200th anniversary. And very much part of their story has always been working with kids in the neighborhood. So like the Lighthouse is just another chapter in that, but it's like, we're just it's just a beautiful story.
Yeah. So I realize into this conversation a little bit that there's probably people listening who maybe aren't from Canton, have no knowledge of Canton. I was like, wait a second. And don't understand, before we get like into the deep history of the Southeast, I want to do a quick little rapid fire questions with you just to give people a taste of kind of where we're talking about a little bit before we get too deep into it. So some of this will be personal to you. Some of it I'm going to ask about the Lighthouse in Southeast. So a favorite place to eat food in Canton?
Ooh. Oh my.
I know.
Delhi, Ohio.
Delhi, Ohio. This is great. This is so good. I'm going to tell everyone who's listening to look up all of these places as we're saying things. When did you move into the Southeast?
95.
95. So right before in 96. Okay. Very, very cool.
A month, maybe a week before our daughter was born.
Wow. Wow. Talk about timing. Oh my gosh. Favorite thing to do that is arts and culture related? Doesn't have to be the symphony.
Oh, well, you know, it ends up, the thing that we attend the most are the summer serenades. And we've been attending more and more shows at the symphony as well. But we really enjoy the summer serenades, like going out to the parks and just enjoying that music. Yeah.
What's another nonprofit that you really respect their work?
Tom Todd.
Okay. Todd I had a feeling you'd say Tom Todd. Again, look up Tom Todd. What is the thing that you're thinking the most about when you hope for the future of Canton? What's top of mind?
I mean, just opportunity for everyone. I mean, I just feel like that is, I just want to say opportunity, like for access and opportunity.
Yeah.
Right?
You set up a beautiful segue because Lighthouse Ministries is located in Southeast Canton, which is like many cities. There's different areas, different districts. I think the Southeast has a reputation for being not a good area, and people have a lot of assumptions about it, and people assume a lot about the people who live there, and even people who are only 5 miles away, maybe who've never even been to the Southeast. But when you talk about opportunity and access, one thing that we did at Lighthouse and with the Canton Symphony is we started a strings program with you all at Lighthouse to provide access to musical education for students. And we'll talk about that program a little bit later, but I'm wondering why, if you could share the story about maybe why the Southeast has ended up a place where we think about opportunity access as something that not everyone has. And if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit of the history of the Southeast.
Sure. I mean, the Southeast continues, but has not always had a real positive, like lots of stereotypes against the Southeast, I guess. So when we moved there, we had great neighbors, really enjoyed the neighborhood. We noticed that, it's primarily African-American neighborhood. I wonder why. But it wasn't until like years later that we finally heard some of the story behind why, or like what the history of what's happened in the Southeast. And so, redlining has been a huge part of the story of the Southeast. But, the thing that sort of really hit home for me was the story of urban renewal, which was a movement that happened across the country in the 70s. But even before that, when Canton was sort of booming, there were just, tons of jobs in Canton. So lots of people moved, looking for work. And so my understanding is that the Southeast was a very diverse neighborhood where Jews, Greeks, Italians, African Americans, like all these people groups moved to the Southeast to live, to find work, and they were able to find work because the economy was booming. And but because Jews, Greeks, Italians are more maybe white, the color of their skin is more white, and so they were able to. Now all of those groups have faced discrimination. So but as some of those barriers diminished for those groups, they were able to move into other parts of the city, or even move out of the city. into the suburbs, where African Americans, because of the color of their skin, there were, it's written into, the deeds or whatever it is that, like you weren't allowed to sell your home if you lived in certain parts of the city to anyone who wasn't Caucasian. So that left. Yeah. So you can find.
I didn't know that part.
Yeah. There's,
gosh.
I can't remember
It's
if deed is the right
stuff
word. That happened.
That
right.
happened.
Totally illegal now, but
crazy.
because it's part of the historical record, many people, Richie Harper's done a lot of work looking at this kind of thing, but, you can give him your address and he will look up the historical record of the deed of your home.
Richie
and he
Harper?
will find,
what does Richie Harper do?
He's local here in Canton. He's been, I'm not sure what he's doing right now actually, but he's been involved, with the prosecutor's office.
Okay.
He's worked in a whole bunch of different places, but very active, and has a whole website devoted to the story of
oh, cool.
redlining in Southeast and urban renewal, how it's affected different areas of Canton. So, wealth of knowledge, but,
that's awesome.
But he's taken upon himself that you give him your address and you can look up, the historical record of your house and see if there used to be prohibitions against who you were allowed to sell your house to.
I had no idea that existed.
Yeah. So totally illegal now, but it's still there as part of the historical record.
Wow.
And so, so that left the Southeast being primarily African-American, but it was a great place to live.
Yeah.
I mean, I know people who grew up there who just have such incredible memories of tons of Black-owned businesses and the entertainment. I've heard stories of just how amazing the entertainment district was. And you had the big entertainers going between New York and Chicago.
Yes.
And Canton
so
was
many
the
people
halfway
came
point.
to Canton,
You stopped in there to perform at
Yes.
the Baby Grand or whatever the different locations were. So on Cherry Avenue.
Gosh.
But, as, when the economy of Canton started to tank and then you had a population loss, you had, the city got worried and tried to kickstart the economy several times. And one of those attempts was with urban renewal. And that it ended up, putting an industrial park right on top of the Southeast neighborhood. Even when the state and some other places advised them to put this outside of the city limits, they put it right on top, bulldozed under hundreds of buildings and homes and displaced, tons of families.
Yeah.
And, it was really unfortunate and gave people, I don't know, I think it was $3,000 to $5,000 for homes from what I can have been able to find should have been worth more like $15,000. And so I think Richie even found some evidence of people who were only given $56 for their homes. Jeez. Right. So, so horrific, you're displacing people. They don't have a place to go because there is no housing and you're uprooting churches and businesses and, all of these things that are so important for a neighborhood's identity.
Yeah.
And so, and the government even cited the city of Canton for displacing people without adequate housing. And so,
really?
So then what happens, what was your
Well, I was going to say, is that why they built government housing then?
Yeah.
Okay.
So my understanding is that the government said, hey, we are not going to give the money for the highways to come through unless you build this housing because of all the people you've displaced.
And the highways became their own thing.
And at one point, the housing was actually a place you wanted to live.
Right.
But over the years, the care maybe and oversight that came with that deteriorated, and then it became a lot of what maybe people think of when they think of public housing today. It does not mean that, I hate, the whole danger of a single story thing. Just because you're living in public housing does not mean, you're destined for some fate. But at the same time, it does mean that, and what happened then is that all the public housing ended up getting put in the Southeast until, again, my understanding of the story is that until someone sued the city and said, you can't keep putting public housing in the Southeast. And so then now it's getting placed in other places. But so that has left the Southeast with very few of those like assets that neighborhoods need to be thriving, right? Because that is what the Southeast was. It was thriving. It was thriving. So many locally, home ownership, solid family units, lots of locally owned businesses. It was, people said it was just a great place to live. It wasn't wealthy, but but it was thriving. And so that being said, with urban renewal, then came like this sort of like stripping out of all those assets. And so when we understood that story, we realized there was lots of like vocational maybe modeling where, as far as people having locally owned businesses, it wasn't something that children growing up in the Southeast saw.
Right. Because it wasn't around them. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's when we really started focusing more on this idea that we need to do our utmost to just provide opportunities for kids to be exposed to different things so that they can like tap into their own giftedness and the way they're wired. And, we would say the God-given gifts that they've had, that they have, and to give them a chance. So whether that's music or, as playing an instrument or, pottery or electronics or whatever it is, cake decorating, we try and put all of these things in front of students so that they can sort of like tap into who they are and how they're wired.
Yeah. So it's like, as I understand it now, looking at the Southeast, there is a grocery store now.
Yes.
There's one grocery store, but there wasn't one until
like 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
For a while. And that just, so many people probably can't even imagine that, of there's no grocery stores. There's no like nearby gas stations. There's literally no resources, and there's a highway that's running right through the middle of it.
Correct.
And students and families who are, struggling financially, struggling with transportation.
Yeah.
How do kids get to school? How do they get to after school? How do they get to anything? Especially if that parent is having to work 2-3 jobs to get them to any, how's that parent going to be able to support their student? It's a really, I think for a lot of people who grow up with privilege, a very, very difficult thing to wrap your head around.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the story of the Southeast and here in Canton is not unique.
Correct.
It's not unique. And
no.
I'm sure basically every city in America has this exact same story.
Yep.
And
head
so
to Akron, head to Cleveland, and then just keep going across the country. Like
literally
it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. And unfortunately, it disproportionately affected minority populations.
Yeah.
And so it has created like this systemic issue of poverty, which is, so it feels like a hill that you can't climb. And it feels as a symphony orchestra, when I'm sitting here as the CEO of a symphony, I'm like, and when I'm thinking about our own relevancy, I'm like, why do we matter when issues like this are going on?
Yeah.
And how, and it's like, I know why, but how does the symphony then enter into this type of work without it feeling like a white savior situation, which you can easily fall into, with like, oh my gosh, look, it's the symphony and we're coming. Congratulations that we are here now. And one thing that I'm really proud that we've been able to do is the strings program that we talked about. And just the symphony had a bunch of strings in the basement, just sitting there doing nothing, not being played. And so we figured out like, hey, if we can just provide these string instruments to students, give them lessons, maybe some of them will enjoy it and want to keep doing it.
Absolutely.
And it's been super fun. And we've been doing it for 4 years because this is 4 years of the program.
That's true. There you go.
That's how long I've been on the board, I guess. And the students have we have the beginner section and an intermediate section of it because it's been happening for long. Some of the students auditioned and are in our youth symphony program. And so it's been really the idea of just opportunity and access it was really easy for us to do. It wasn't that hard. It is hard to do it. The work is, it takes a lot of people. Thank you, John.
That's right.
His work.
And all of your staff too.
And the symphony staff and Raylina, who teaches the students, working so hard with them. She's so wonderful. But I'm curious, now that you talked about at the very beginning of this conversation about, you see kids in the paper that they get involved in a gang or they got in trouble for something. And so we do this after school program. I'm wondering how, now that the Lighthouse is turning 30, next year? This year. Oh my gosh. This year, the Lighthouse is turning 30. How have you all seen that impact the neighborhood? And what have you heard from the neighborhood and from students who have gone through the program that now are maybe in their 30s or their 40s,
right.
Who were impacted by the program?
Sure. I mean, it's always a blast running into former Lighthouse students, in the grocery store or something, and they'll come up and they'll be like, "Oh man, do you remember me? I was such a knucklehead, but like you guys loved me." And so those are fun stories. And every kid was a knucklehead, so like that's not specific to the Lighthouse neighborhood, but but yeah, and it's also been fun to see like parents come back and like stop in and see the growth, like even the way the building's changed and the different now with all the arts programming that we're adding. Like there's just like, wow, this is not, I wish this would have been around when I was there, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And for the families who have stayed in the community, like we have a large number of Lighthouse students who are the children of Lighthouse students, and so that's cool. That's a lot of fun. And then that's super fun. Then we also have several staff who grew up as Lighthouse kids who are now back working with us, and they have our office manager Sierra, like she grew up in the neighborhood, and she's full-time with us, but then we have other staff who have other full-time jobs working with Kansas City schools, but then work with us in the after-school program. So it's just like our child care administrator, Trisha, she's she handles all of our licensure stuff. And so like, she was a Lighthouse kid, and it's so just fun. Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. So it's, it's just, I don't know. It's just awesome to like see that kind of thing happening. So.
Yeah. You talk so humbly all the time about the work that you all do, which I think is why it works and why you all are so successful, is that it isn't this big show of look how great we are and how much we've impacted things. It's very small moments of care that add up over time. And I'm curious for you. I mean, I know like as a board member, I know we've talked a lot about the future. And as you've been doing this now for, like, what do you see? What is your hope? I know you talked about access and opportunity, but what do you hope for Lighthouse, and what do you hope for the Southeast neighborhood that you think the Lighthouse can be a part of for the future?
Well, it in many ways, like some of the programming the Lighthouse offers is like sort of like laying a foundation or a bed from which other things can grow, right? Yeah. So, whether it's playing an instrument, it's not just about creating like a future musician necessarily, but it's like helping a child tap into that creative side, or even the brain development that comes with learning how to play a musical instrument, right? So, like that lays a foundation for things to grow from, right? Our entrepreneurship program where the kids start their own small businesses, like, are they going to own their own small business someday? Maybe, but the entrepreneurial spirit, that makes for better like employees. It makes for a better business owner for sure, but it also makes for better employees, better family members, community members. That entrepreneurial spirit, like, creates a foundation from which other things can grow, right? And I'll say this too, I'm going to parallel here a little bit, but like the city 100% recognizes some of the mistakes that were made, right? And they are starting to invest in the infrastructure of the Southeast. So like paving, lighting, like, sewer, like all the things that lays a bed for now businesses to like say, oh, I can invest here.
Oh, there's good lighting here, so I would put a business here so people can park and come to the 100%.
Oh, there's 9,000 people that live within 5 minutes of my like, why wouldn't you put a business there, right? So like So like, it's really interesting to like see those two things parallel too. Now that means there's still tons of investment that's needed in the Southeast, but you lay a solid bed from which other things can grow. And I think that's really what a lot of, the Lighthouse is about. You asked, I didn't give the mission statement. So for the Lighthouse, the mission is to support families by walking alongside the youth in our community, offering safe, holistic, and effective opportunities for students to understand their God-given gifts and their potential for impacting the world around them. So like, tap into who you are, tap into your gifts so that you can make an impact. And whether that is, so, how can we expose, how can we help kids tap into who they are? Right. And their understanding of self. And from that, beautiful things will grow.
Yeah. You say it so beautifully. That's so nice. I wish I could be that articulate with things. And I think that comes from a deep sense of knowing, of being very sure about who you are as an organization, which is a gift that I think a lot of organizations don't have, of really truly understanding like the purpose and why we are here and what we are doing. And I think that that's a really beautiful thing that you're we
get a little fanatical about that, actually. Like,
I know. I'm aware. Like, no, this is who we are. Yeah, which is good. I think that's so good.
I think it's really protected us to like and like, okay, this is where we're headed. You know, like
having that mindset.
This is what we're about.
Yeah, I think it's something that the symphony is striving to better understand ourselves, and the transition that we've been over the last few years with losing a longtime artistic leader and shifts and all of these shifts and funding shifts and everything. Like, who are we? We can't just be the Canton Symphony Orchestra under Gerhardt, right? We are the Canton Symphony Orchestra who happens to have a music director, right? Like, we need to make sure that we really know ourselves. And that's something that I think the Lighthouse does really, really well.
Thank you.
And one thing that I want to make sure we touch on is kind of some current event stuff about funding, because there's been some pretty drastic changes that have impacted not only Lighthouse, but the city and other places. And this is community development grants and access to after-school programming. And I was wondering if you could touch just a little bit about, maybe for people who aren't in the weeds about what this stuff is, about community development grants, what those are, how the changes in that funding have impacted Lighthouse in the city of Canton, and then maybe we can touch on the after-school programs as well.
So, I mean, there's been, it's pretty well known, there's been lots of cuts in federal funding to, all across the board sort of a thing. And so like that works itself down to the local level through maybe some of those community development block grant monies. But, the city also has to pay attention to its priorities too. So there's a mix there. But I think where it has really impacted the Southeast the most, or actually the city of Canton the most, is, we have a school district that was doing really well financially. They had just been just right on top of it, in the best financial shape, I think in a decade and a half or something like that. It was some crazy number. But then, within a 6-month period, they come to realize that, now the projections are that, we're going to be like in a $17.8 million deficit or it was some crazy number like that. So, and that was all because of changes in how the state was going to fund the schools. I think how the federal government was going to fund the schools. Like, they just got slammed from multiple sides. And which meant that they had to take some sort of draconian measures to if we're going to stay viable, we have to make these cuts. And, and so some of the federal money that had come in for 21st century and after school programming, those were disappearing, and the school district was having to figure out how to stay fiscally responsible, and they couldn't just fund out of their operating budget the after school stuff, because they were having to make all these other changes. And so for us, for the last several years, the Lighthouse has been investing in growing stronger as an organization rather than necessarily larger.
Bigger, right? Stronger.
So we're at a point where the capacity is there now that, when we see some of the elementary schools in the neighborhood lose their after school programming. Well, so now we talk with Patrick Elementary. Hey, we'd like to start up like help start up an after school program there. So this past November, we launched our second after school site at Patrick Elementary. School district is providing, facilities, cleaning, like all of that, electric, all of that stuff, and some funding for some of the staff. But like the majority of it is coming from the Lighthouse. But that's because we are now in a position to be able to do that.
Right.
And we are actually able to launch that second after school site for about 35, maybe 40% of what it costs to run the program at our site.
Right.
Which is beautiful. Like, and that's because we have the infrastructure built for it.
Right.
And so now we're having the conversations with Belden Elementary, the other elementary school in our neighborhood, about doing the same there in the fall.
Yeah.
So we're going to be able to triple the number of students served in after school for less than double the cost.
Yeah.
Of after school. So like it's just a beautiful, like I'm just so grateful that we're in that position to be able to do that. Like, so, and I mean, there's some funders stepping in to help with that, which is great. But like, at some point, and when we have plans for how to make that sustainable, but like just to get us launched and off, like Sisters of Charity and some other funders are stepping in to make it happen.
Right.
So
I think I ask our podcast guests to give recommendations for things for people, and usually that's a piece of music or a book. But I think if you have a recommendation that you think people should partake in, one thing that I'll say is that I really hope that people will research their own city and try to learn all of the history of it and see if there are like simple ways for you to get involved in your own community, because after school programming can be life-changing for students and can be life-changing for families who need that childcare, honestly, sometimes during those times, who they can't afford other types of, it is something that is so needed. And unfortunately right now in Canton is very sparse because of what you just mentioned with cuts to funding and organization. There's not a lot of after school programming happening. And so I wonder if there's anything that you would recommend to listeners that might be informational for them. Maybe there's a book, a great resource, a podcast. I wrote down Richie Harper's name. I'm going to try to find his website. But if there's anything that you think might be valuable for people. I
mean, the Color of Law was a very influential book for me.
Wow.
Just looking at, just how, all of the regulations and laws that came in to play that were all like racially formed. And I think it's in that book where the author says, if everyone had an equitable position from which to step into ownership, it would take about would things rectify themselves in terms of quality across the racial boundaries? He said, yeah, it would, but it would take about 200 years.
Jeez.
So, it's there has to be things. And I would say, too, when you see situations like a neighborhood that isn't maybe doing the best or has some doesn't have the best name or whatever, ask questions. Yeah. Try and find out why.
Yeah. Don't just assume.
You may be irritating by asking lots of questions, but you will never be offending because you're just trying to understand, and so I would say just ask questions as to why things are the way they are. Yeah. And if you dig far enough, you'll be shocked. You'll be surprised. So.
Yeah. Okay, we ask this question of everybody who comes on the podcast. So it's open-ended and you can say anything. But we ask, the podcast is called Orchestrating Change. We started this podcast after the murder of George Floyd as kind of the symphony's very small way of trying to learn and do better, and figure out how can we be, part of this change. And I'm curious, we ask everyone, how do we orchestrate change? How would you orchestrate change? What would be your response to that question?
Oh my.
I know it's very open-ended.
Yeah. I'm wired differently. I'm wired the way I'm wired. But for me, I'm someone who is just, I tend to be just fairly rooted. I can make home wherever, but I've chosen to make home in the Southeast. That's where I'm rooted. That's where I'm setting my roots. That's where I have set my roots. Like, become part of the story. Like, you know, like, and so, you know, I guess, but I know not everyone's wired. Like, there are people who like need to be moving around, and you can make change that way too.
Yeah.
But like for me and just how I'm wired, I need to be rooted where I'm at, bloom where you're planted, like kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But like that for me is what I think of when I think of like, what does it mean to bring change? It's like, be rooted, care about where you're at, invest, make a difference.
Yeah.
Like, seek what's best for everyone. Like, ask questions when things aren't the best for everyone.
Yeah.
So, that's my answer.
Yeah. No, that's really good. I appreciate that. Well, Darin, I thank you for, you know, I've known you for so long now, and we've had this podcast for so long now that it felt weird that we hadn't had a conversation yet. But we'll link lots of stuff in the description. But I will just say, you know, thank you for the work that the Lighthouse does, and thank you for letting our strings partnership happen.
Oh, it's been
so
awesome.
Fun.
It has been so cool.
It's so fun, and I'm so glad that we get to do it. And so thank you so much. And we'll link all the stuff for checking out the Lighthouse, so hopefully people can hop on and learn more about you all. But thank you, Darin. I appreciate you being here today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Orchestrating Change is a production of the Canton Symphony Orchestra. Our theme music was composed by Eric Gould and performed by Derek Snyder and Tim Adams. Our video and audio editor is Sarah Daler. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.